Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Thinking Maps Ambassadors class. This is our second session, and today we'll be working on our bubble map. I just want to make sure I let you know at the beginning of the session that this session is being recorded. We will be posting it up on Haiku for all of our students to be able to watch in the future. So we're going to jump in and get started. We're going to talk first about what is a bubble map and why do I care? So a bubble map is this fabulous tool that we get to use to help us when we are trying to learn how to broaden our thinking by describing something. So if, for example, you're getting ready to write an essay for your teacher and you need to know a lot about a character, or you're going to be describing a character or why they did something, this particular map would be a wonderful tool to help you get started. So when we do a bubble map, we start with our topic in the center. So for this map, I'm going to give you an example of describing your best friend. So I'm going to start with my best friend. All right, so we write the topic or the title or the person's name in the middle. We can use this for characters. You can also use this for movements in history. We can use this for math concepts, but right now we're using it to describe this particular character. And when we do a bubble map, we describe using only adjectives. So our adjectives are those describing words. If we remember, they describe nouns. So for my friend Shiloh, I know that she likes to do arts and crafts a lot, but I can't put likes to do crafts because that's not an adjective. So I want to think about that. Now, I know that people who do crafts are really creative. So I'm going to put creative on here. And so this is another way when I have to put it into an adjective that I am being very mindful of the language that I use so that I can use very precise descriptors rather than being really wordy and using lots of words. So for my friend, I've got the descriptor, the adjective creative. Now, in my frame of reference, I'm going to explain how I know that. So for my friend, I know that she likes to knit and she likes to crochet. And so those are ways that she shows that she is creative. Awesome. So another attribute of my friend is that she is talented. And talented is an adjective, so I'm okay to use it. So I circle my adjective and I connect it to the term I'm describing. And now I'm going to add in my frame of reference a detail that helped me figure out that she was talented. For example, in this case, I know that she's talented because I've heard her sing in the choir. So I know that she sings in the choir every week. Sings in choir. So I'm giving my evidence here in my frame of reference. And some of you may be taking an English class. You may have noted how important documenting your opinion with evidence is. So this map is a wonderful way for us to begin organizing our thoughts and to help us start to document that evidence that we based our ideas on. All right, so we're going to talk about another attribute or two before we move on. So one more attribute I can say about my friend is that she is generous. So that would be an adjective, generous. Sorry, guys. Little bit of a tech glitch. There we go. So I know that my friend is generous because she's lent me money and she has absolutely no expectation of ever getting that money back, which is the only time you should lend money, right? All right. So I know my friend is generous. I know she's creative. I know she's talented. I could also say that she's kind because she adopts animals. So that's one way she shows kindness. So I'm going to circle my descriptor, my adjective, connect it to the term being described, and I'm going to add in my frame of reference my documentation or my evidence. Or I would if the board was working. There we go. I know that she adopts animals. Okay. So now that I have my thoughts down, what am I going to do with this? I can do a number of things with this, but I need to learn how to speak from my map, and that will help me to be able to write. But it will also be a good way that I can start conversations with my teacher or with other students. So I want to show you guys how we might speak off of this particular map. So we would start by saying something like, I'm going to tell you why my friend Shiloh is such a good friend. She's a good friend because she's creative. She likes to knit and crochet. She's generous because she lent me money and didn't expect to get it back. She's talented because she sings in the choir. And she's kind because she adopts and cares for animals. These are all reasons why I enjoyed my friend Shiloh. So what I just did was to speak off the map. And when I speak off the map, I need to make sure that the person I'm speaking to, I'm looking at them, making eye contact, that I speak slowly enough so that I can enunciate what I'm saying so that people can understand me. And we're going to be working on giving you guys a chance to practice that. So now that you've seen an example of what this map looks like, I would like you, working on your own, to take the next 3 minutes, and I want you to create your own bubble map describing your best friend. So I'm going to pause our recording for 3 minutes while you guys go ahead and work on creating your own map. All right, does anyone have any questions about what we are doing right now? Nope, doesn't sound like it. Good. So I'm gonna let you guys go for the next 3 minutes or so, and I'm hoping that when we get back, you might have some examples to give us, to show us. No. Okay, I hope that you've had a chance to get a start on a bubble map about your best friend. Is there anyone who has questions or would like to show us what they've written so far? Okay, so now that we've practiced creating a bubble map about someone we know well, hopefully, our best friend, I'd like to talk a little bit more about how bubble maps can help us be a more effective learner. So one strategy that we can use for bubble maps is to describe a character from a novel that we are reading. Or if we are not reading a novel, perhaps we're watching a movie. So we can use a bubble map to help us better understand a character. And that can help us prepare when we are doing an essay or even preparing for a quiz on a novel. So let's take a look. I have an example of a bubble map that was created to describe a character in a story. So this particular bubble map was created to describe the character of the Invisible Man, and it's from the story Got the Whole World Watching. And We can see that the student wrote the character in the middle and they've got their circle. They've got some adjectives describing this character. So they put confused. And in their frame of reference to explain how they knew he was confused, they said that white leaders deceive him. We've also got the descriptor lost, and you can see that we have another piece of evidence here. They document that he's never been to Harlem, so that's why he's lost. He's angry, they said, because people lied to him. So notice that we've got evidence here. And one thing we might do to improve this map, especially if we're using this particular map to help us launch our writing, would be to include a specific quote with a page number. This is a great start though, because it's helping us to organize our thoughts. And you can see that for each piece, each descriptor, we have at least one piece of evidence. So we have a great start here. And this map is a good example of an analysis of a character that we might do. So now that we've seen this, I'd like you guys to ask me any questions you might have about how to create a bubble map. Does anyone have a question about how bubble maps should be created? All right. I don't hear any questions coming, but I do want to make sure that you guys note that these examples I've shown you all have different numbers of circles here. There is no set number of descriptors, of adjectives that you have to have. So this map should be completely authentic. This is your map. You can make it your own, and it needs to fit your situation and your thoughts. So I'm never going to give my students a black line master that has this map with 4 or 6 bubbles and say you have to fill in the bubbles, because you guys are capable of independent thought and you need to match what you're doing with what you want. So the number of adjectives can change on every single map that you do. All right. Now we've seen an example of how we can use this bubble map to describe a character. And in our frame of reference, we're incorporating our evidence so that we know exactly where we're getting our information from. We are going to be completing a similar bubble map on our own time this week, and it will be turned into your teacher. You're going to choose a character from one of your assigned readings this week. If you are not taking an English class and you don't have a reading that has an assigned character, you might be taking a history class. You could choose a specific historical figure from the period you're reading about this week, and you could complete a bubble map describing that historical figure. It might be the leader of a movement. It might be a person who was a martyr. It could be a political leader. It could be a leader of a grassroots movement. This could be a president. It could be any particular person that is mentioned in the history course you're taking. It could be someone from English. If you're taking math and you don't have a specific individual that's mentioned, perhaps you are learning theorems and they mention a specific theorem that was founded or formed by an individual. So you could do some research about that particular individual who created that. This particular assignment can be adapted to any subject you're taking. So if you're not learning about a specific character, you might find the person in science who came up with the theory you're studying, or in math, the person who found the theorem or the formula that you're learning about. So no matter what class you're taking, you can find an individual that you could learn more about and describe using a bubble map. So your teacher will be expecting you to give them a bubble map that describes some character or person from your readings this week, and you need to make sure that you include your frame of reference with your documentation. And just to make life a little bit less confusing, I do have a rubric for our thinking map. So let me see if I can get to that rubric real quick. Hold on just a moment. I've got to switch screens here. I've got a thinking map rubric, and we will be looking at bubble maps this week. Sorry, guys, forgot to scan up here. Let's get to the one we're looking for here. Okay, so this is our bubble map rubric. And a rubric just helps us understand whether we are completing all of the parts of the assignment. And I've thrown a lot at you at once, so I just want to kind of decompose what we're doing with our bubble map. So the target term needs to be clear and legible in the middle of the circle. And for my students, because I want them to really be thinking in depth, I ask them to come up with 5 or more synonyms or synonym phrases in the outer circles. Those should say adjectives, right? Great students, they should say adjectives. Let's see if I can fix this. I don't know if I can edit. There we go. 5 or more adjectives or adjective phrases. Because remember, with a bubble map, we always want to use adjectives. So we should have 5 or more adjective or adjective phrases in our outer circles. We should have a frame of reference that contains at least one quote or piece of evidence from the source that we're reading. And I have on here that you need to document that in APA or MLA format. So whatever format your teacher is asking you to use when you document sources, you need to make sure that you know what format you need to use for that source. All of your quotes and sources in the frame of reference need to be directly related to what you're saying. For example, if you say someone is kind and you have a quote that is talking about the color of the sky, there's no connection there. So we want to make sure that our quotes really support and provide evidence for the adjectives we've chosen to describe our topic. All right. Does anyone have questions about this rubric or what needs to be in our bubble map? Just want to open it up for a moment and see if there are any questions at all so far. Okay, I don't hear any questions, so we're going to continue just a little bit more. What I'd like to do now is talk about our school-wide learning outcomes. Does anyone remember what our school-wide learning outcomes are? We talked about this in our first meeting, but it's been a week and not everybody got to see it. So let's take a look. Some of you may remember this. Our school-wide learning outcomes are spelled. So we've got G, R, A, D, and S. All right. So we may or may not remember what those learning outcomes stand for. G stands for growth mindset. You'll have to excuse my terrible handwriting, guys. I'm not very good with this pad. All right. So we want to be growth minded. That is our first attribute here. Sorry. As I said, not very good at drawing with this, but my other board doesn't seem to be working well. So we'll use this one. So growth-minded is our first attribute. And our second one, anybody want to chime in and help me out with our second one? All right. Our second one is resourceful. We all want to be resourceful. And I got to say, those of you who have logged in so far today are showing that you are resourceful. You had an opportunity to learn something new that would help you, and you took advantage of that opportunity. And you may have had some technology challenges in the meantime, may even have had to ask your teacher for help, right? All right, so we have been resourceful today. Can anyone remember what A stands for? Oh, come on, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody? I'm hearing crickets here. All right. A. I am going to pause a moment, and I do really want to hear from anyone who's in the audience. Is there anyone who can tell us what the A in grads stands for? I'm going to pause a sec. I just want to see, just sort of a heads up. Anybody listening? Okay, hang on. All right, so for A, let me resume our share. Sorry, guys. Okay, so for A, it's actively engaged.
Right,
You guys can laugh at my terrible handwriting. Mr. Cho, do I hear you over there? Somebody with the question?
You had it on mute because we didn't want any feedback, but one of the students here we're going to shout out the answers to you, okay?
Yay! Can anyone tell us what D stands for?
Determined.
Oh, thank you. See, I knew a bunch of our kiddos knew these. Excellent. And you guys are welcome to laugh at my terrible handwriting. I'm sorry. Determined. This is harder than it looks. Awesome. And can anyone get our last one? What does S mean?
Socially responsible.
Yay! Thank you so much. I appreciate the shout out. Awesome. Socially responsible. Thank you. Okay. So we are going to ask you guys to begin something while you're with me, and then we will have you probably do a little bit more research on it. And I said resourceful instead of responsible. Sorry, guys. We're going to have you do just a little bit of research on it and finish it up, and that will be another assignment that you give to your teacher this week. So what we're going to have you do is choose one of these aspects of GRADS, one of these characteristics, and I want you to create a map that describes someone in your life that you know who exhibits this characteristic and how they do so. So I'm going to give you kind of an example here, and let's see if I can. I'm going to clear this out here, guys. Okay, so I am going to pick D for determined. And I'm going to change my color, guys, so it's a little easier to read. Sorry. Let's go with D for determined, and I'm just going to put the D in the middle because my drawings are so bad. There we go. So I've got D. And I am thinking about someone in my life who is determined. I would have to say one of the most determined people I've met is a friend of mine. And she shows she's determined because she never gives up. Let's see. So now I need to think of a way to describe this determined person, and I don't want to just keep using the word determined, and I need to use an adjective. Can anyone think of another word that I might use for someone who never gives up? She just keeps going. Let's see. So this is one of the beauties of this particular map, is that it forces us to really think about the vocabulary we're using. We might have to go to an online thesaurus or dictionary to look up other words for determined. So this person never gives up. I'm going to say that this is a word some of you may know. The word is tenacious. And please excuse my terrible handwriting. Tenacious is an adjective for not giving up. Okay, so my friend is tenacious. That's another word for determined. And I know that she's tenacious because she had a lot of health challenges, but she still made herself go to school and get her degrees done so that she could get a better job. Okay, so she had health challenges and she didn't let it stop her. She never let it slow her down. Other people might have given up, but nope, not her. All right. So this is one way I can describe my determined friend. So now I need to think of several more descriptors. They need to be adjectives that would describe this friend. And for this particular activity, it might help to almost do it backwards. So I'm going to think about my friend and I'm going to think of an incident, and then I will try and come up with a word that describes her determination in that incident. So this particular friend was expelled from school when she was in high school, but unlike some of my other friends, when she got expelled, she didn't just give up. She actually found another school that would allow her to enroll, kind of like our school. So she was able to continue her education. So I'm gonna say, I almost had a word there. Okay, so she was motivated because she could have given up. right? And she could have just said, they won't let me go to the school. I'm just gonna, get a job and live life or go out and party. But she chose to continue her education, even though it was quite a lot of work for her. So I put my adjective here, I circled it with my terrible circle, I connected it to my middle here. And now I'm going to talk about what I just told you guys that shows she's motivated. So I might say that she didn't give up on school when she was expelled. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about how we can be doing that, how we can do this? How to complete their bubble map or what's expected on their bubble map? Okay, so it sounds like everyone has a pretty good idea of what to do for this particular map. Remember that we chose one aspect of grads and we thought of a person who exemplified that aspect, and we are using our bubble map to describe that person. Next week, when you go to your meeting, you will be presenting this bubble map to your teacher. And I want you to speak off the map to your teacher. I want you to be able to look at the map and think of it as notes to help you begin a conversation with your teacher. So when you talk to your teacher, you're going to be maintaining eye contact. You want to speak clearly and at a pace so that your teacher, and if you have other students in the room, can understand what you're saying. You want to make sure that you're thorough in explaining your ideas. And we want to make sure that we include all of our ideas from our map. So we can give everyone a really good glimpse into what we were thinking. And it might just be that this particular map will help you think in new ways about the character or topic that you're describing. All right, so we have 2 assignments this week that we are supposed to complete with our teacher. 2 maps that we're going to do. Can anyone remember what the first map that I asked you to complete this week was? Uh-oh, that's not good. All right, clearly I did not make this clear enough. So the first map I asked you to complete was to create a bubble map about a character from your assigned reading. Now, if you are not taking an English class and you don't have a novel that or a story that you're reading, then you could be completing a bubble map about a person, an inventor from your science book, or a leader from your history book, or perhaps if you are taking math, you might write your bubble map about the person who created the formula you're studying or the branch of mathematics that you're studying. So no matter what class we're in, even if it's economics, we can find a person behind a movement and we can create our map about that person. I'm sorry, guys. I am struggling with this. There we go. Character in assigned reading. So our first assignment, and our teachers are going to be looking for this week, is to create a bubble map describing a character in your assigned reading. All right, who can tell me what our first bubble map should be about this week? All right, I know some of you have your audio turned off. Our first bubble map should be about a character from our assigned reading. It can be from any subject we're studying. And our second bubble map should be about, let's change colors here, we're getting bored, sorry guys. Our second bubble map is the one we just described. We need to describe someone who exemplifies grads. So just choose one aspect of grads. If you find that easier, I only chose one aspect of grads, and I wanted to describe someone who was an example of grads of that particular aspect in my life. This can be someone you know, but it could also be someone famous if you feel like that person is someone you can connect with that fits this better. So we want to describe an example of someone who we think is a really good example of one particular characteristic of grads. So this week we have two maps, our character description, and also we're describing someone who exemplifies grads in our life. This can be someone famous, this can be someone in your family. You could even describe yourself, because I know many of you have been working with your teachers on grads and talking about each of those characteristics and how we can work them into our life and our daily routine. All right, does anyone have any questions about what our assignment is today? No. Okay, so these are the two maps that we will be expecting you to get turned into your teachers next week. And teachers and students, you should find the rubric that we looked at earlier on Haiku. So that should be available to you shortly. It's being put up on Haiku. So those rubrics will be available to you. And I want you to remember that when you're creating these maps are a way to help you really think about your thinking and learn more in depth about what you're doing. So you might use a bubble map to help launch your writing. You might use a bubble map to help you begin some of those academic conversations with your teachers, because you might be describing your character that you're reading and want to incorporate some of those vocabulary words. That would be a great way to use this bubble map. You can also, if you're working on presenting your bubble map, you might practice writing out what you said ahead of time. So you could write out in a brief paragraph on your frame of reference what you want to say to your teacher or your classmates. Does anyone have any questions about presenting their bubble maps or what needs to be on their bubble map? All right, I'm not hearing any questions just yet. So let's just take a quick peek one last time. I want to make sure you guys understand what the criteria are for your bubble map. So the target term, that's what you're describing, should be clear in the center of your map. You should have 5 or more adjectives or adjective phrases on the outside perimeter of your map. You should have a frame of reference that contains evidence describing the term. So you should have evidence for where you're getting this information from. And if it's from a novel, you might actually copy down a phrase or a sentence and what page you found that on. That would be great. All right, make sure that when you're putting in your evidence, it relates directly to the word you're describing your character with. All right, so we've gone over our rubric a couple of times, and we know that we have 2 maps assigned, right? The first map is describing a character from our assigned reading. The second map is describing someone in our life who exemplifies one aspect or more of grads. If you choose to do more than one aspect of grads, you may, but it's going to expand what you're doing quite significantly. All right. Are there any questions today about what we're doing, how to create a bubble map, how it can help us, or what our assignments are? Okay, it doesn't sound like I have any questions, so I will let you get started. Happy bubble map creating. And please feel free to check in with your teachers or with me if you have any questions in the future. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.